whether it was being in love with a donkey, because that was one of the episodes where that man was kissing a donkey on the stage,
Yeah.
and whether or not we think it's appropriate or not,
Yeah.
putting somebody in a position to be seen by the entire world on television and benefiting from the fact that we know people are judging them based on whatever they got going on, they were being exploited for sure.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, what's good, everybody? It's Glory LaJoy, aka G Money, aka Big Glow with the dub, aka Glow if you know, and Lady G if you're nasty. And I'm here with my home girl.
Hey y'all, it's E.
Yeah, it's E with the keys to the streets. And this
To the
is,
streets?
yeah.
No.
No? Okay.
I reject that.
Back to the drawing board on that one.
Yeah, we gonna go back.
Okay, good.
We gonna run the block. We gonna spin the block with that one.
Well, and this is The Quiet Part Out Loud.
It is.
Welcome back. And guess what? If you're here, that means you're watching episode 5.
Yeah, we're almost down to the end of the season.
Check us out. How you feeling about that? Let's start there for 2 seconds.
Whew. It's been long and it's been short at the same time. So I'm excited to reflect on like the reception we've had so far and like where we want to take it from this moment. So yeah, excitement is what I feel about it.
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Well, today we're gonna be talking about exploitation. And the question is, are we exploitative? Are we exploiters? And I are gonna kind of just sit with some of the stuff. We're actually going to utilize a Netflix documentary called Jerry Springer, Fights Camera Action. So if you have not seen that documentary, it's a episodes, it's 2 episodes. We suggest you go check that out. It's really interesting content. And it just really gives you something to think about. And as somebody who grew up with Jerry Springer on the television, I remember it very prominently. It's just interesting to see the impact of it and the behind the scenes of it all, because it really gives you insight that otherwise you just wouldn't have for real.
For sure.
I will say, I had watched it. I came by it on Netflix, and again, I just remember seeing Jerry Springer. One of my cousins really liked watching Jerry Springer. You know, all the Jerry Springers, the Maury's, like it was daytime television, you know, either it's that or like a Judge Mathis or something like that. All of that, all of those things. And I remember, you know, every once in a while my aunties or my cousins would watch it. I wasn't necessarily a fan of it, but like I just remember there would be some really ridiculous stuff on it. And people would get on there and fight like dogs. And I remember always thinking that it can't be real. Like this has to be scripted. I don't believe this is real. And so when I seen the documentary, I'm a big documentary girly in general. But you know, this is something that I remember watching, and I'm curious. I want to know, like, what's the background? What's the context? How did it start? And like, what's the tea for real? So that's what drew me to it. And I told you about it, E. I don't know if you want to contribute to that question in general of like being drawn to it at all.
Yeah, I reflect the same sentiments. I was aware of Jerry Springer. I was aware of Maury. I caught a few episodes here and there, but it was not something I wanted to spend my time with because, like you, I also thought this is a sham. Like, these people are being paid to come onto these shows to act a plumb fool. And okay, fine. If that's how you get your bag, I respect it. It's a hustle. But it just seemed absolutely ridiculous. And so, unless there was a fight, I don't know what it is about seeing fights in real life that is just like, we can't take our eyes away from it happening. It was just the insanity of how quickly things would just go left.
Escalate. Absolutely.
Like, yes, escalate is the term. And you were just like, what the what is happening? Yes. Yeah, it was just absurd to me. Even as a young kid, because when it was on the air, I was in elementary school, I think
Yep.
even. So yeah, I reflect a lot of what you've shared about it. But I did check it out and it brought some questions to my mind,
Hmm.
especially hearing what the producers of the show who were very close, who were like the right hand folks to creating what the Jerry Springer show was
Yeah.
and how they treated the people on the show. Like that's something I would have never thought was the
Yeah.
case. Because again, I thought it was all everybody was in on it, but
Mhm.
that really wasn't the case. So yeah, that's what drew me to it is like your recommendation of it, and then having viewed it myself, it brought to mind a lot of different questions, which we'll get into today.
So let's jump right in. And I think it's good to start off with what the definition of exploitation is. So I'm gonna
Mm,
pull up the definition of that real quick. And
I
I'm just
got you, girl.
oh hey, period. Give us the definition.
So there are a few. Um, To be specific, exploitation is a noun, and the first definition reads that is the action or fact of treating someone unfairly in order to benefit from their work. And then a second definition is the act of making use of or benefiting from specific resources. And then the simplest terms, you just take advantage of someone, and by taking advantage of someone or something or some people, you stand to benefit from it and they stand to be disadvantaged by it.
So by definition,
Mhm.
and by what we watched in the documentary,
Mhm.
I think it is safe to say that the people being brought on to the show were
Mhm.
definitely being exploited.
Mhm.
And there were people, all the people who were working for the Jerry Springer show were in fact benefiting from these people's real life situation.
Turmoil. Yeah.
The things that they were having an issue with, whether it was a cheating spouse,
Mhm.
whether it was being in love with a donkey, because that was one of the episodes where that man was kissing a donkey on the stage,
Yeah.
and whether or not we think that's appropriate or not,
Yeah.
putting somebody in a position to be seen by the entire world on
Mm.
television and benefiting from the fact that we know people are judging them based on whatever
Mhm.
they got going on, they were being exploited for sure.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. No, you can complete your thought. I don't want to cut you off.
No, that I did, and I was going somewhere else. So please.
Okay. I was going to also add that the producers of the show, they were both exploiters and also exploited as well because their livelihood as a production team member and what that meant for their lives, taking care of their families or being able to take care of themselves. This crucible that was created by, was it the head of like of a network or
That's what it seemed. I think that part was a little because there were like it was the one guy whose name I want to say is Rob, but don't
Mhm,
quote me because I don't know if that's right. Who
mhm.
seemed to be lead of production, who wanted
Yeah,
the stories to be
yeah,
real, who wanted, you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Who seemed to kind of bring up fear in people.
With his dominance in the direction that the show went and the decisions they made in terms of getting people to participate and to deliver the
Hmm.
fights and the drama that drove the viewership and would line their pockets with money,
Yes.
which I don't think the production team, like the main two producers, which I don't think they really got to see. So it's
Mm.
like this is all serving a purpose for the key players, which would have been the
The
face of the
next.
show, which is
Oh,
Jerry,
yeah.
and then Rob, who you mentioned, who putting
So
quotes
Richard,
around Rob.
his name is Richard. I just
Richard. Okay.
yes.
Richard. Well, you were close. That's still an R
Yeah,
name.
all right. All right. I'll take that dub.
So really the head honchos were the ones that really got to see the benefit. And that's not to say that they weren't also subjected to some harm as well. It
Right.
just because you're steering the ship and I think there's a level of investment. So I think I'm kind of moving into one of our other questions, which is like what kind of feelings and thoughts and
Hmm.
emotions came up as we viewed the content.
Yeah.
Um, I think when you are invested in something and you see that something is working, even if it is exploitative, you will do anything to justify, to rationalize the behavior or the means to get
Hmm.
to said end. And it isn't until things start to crumble in a very tangible way that you will realize the effect this has had on you. And
Yeah.
they didn't really focus too much on Dick and where he landed in all of this. And I'm not even sure if this man is still in the business, like if he's still producing things, because
Yeah.
if he
That's a good
hasn't taken
question.
a long lasting look at himself prior to walking away from this particular production, I'm afraid for whatever else he may be putting his hands on, knowing that there was focus on where Jerry stood. I am curious. That was one of the things that I walked away with is like with this man being in control of the image of the direction, as I mentioned earlier, of where this production went.
Hmm.
What did he feel about it? Because we got to hear from the major right hand producers, the woman and the
Yeah.
man. We got to hear about Jerry, and then there was some commentary or snippets of interviews and clips that you reminded me of at the end of Jerry expressing his remorse, but nothing direct from this man. Like he wasn't someone that at any point in the documentary was someone making statements and talking about things because did he die?
He passed in 2023.
Yeah. And I think I remember hearing about his passing and I don't really think I thought too much of it.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder. I can't remember because again, I wasn't a fan of the show, so wasn't seeking it out. But it makes me wonder if when he passed, was there kind of like a resurgence of those
Mm.
episodes in 2023? I wouldn't know, but it makes me curious about that. So that was another thought that occurred to me in knowing that he was dead. Although I had to be reminded right now that
Yeah.
he's no longer with us. But yeah. So to wrap up my thoughts, the producers were definitely both, contributing to and also being recipients of the bad vibes that was the production on the show. They were definitely exploiting the hell out of these people and their stories, telling
Hmm.
them anything to rile them up to get the reaction, to get the performance from these folks.
Hmm.
So in some ways, it's not that it was scripted, but it was definitely cultivated, it was definitely intentional.
Yes.
Um and then it just made me wonder about like the reflections of all the folks that were involved because there's plenty more people that were involved
Hmm.
in this whole thing
Yeah.
besides just the folks that were brave enough to participate in the documentary and share their perspective about it. What were some thoughts, emotions, and feelings that came up for you when you were watching it?
The question that I was going to pose, and I pose it, but I wait for us to kind of dig deeper into it, is
Mm.
was Jerry himself exploited in a way or
Mm.
not? And so we can pin that real quick. Just in
Okay.
regards to feelings, thoughts, questions, to me, it was really telling to get the context of like how they found people. The fact
Mm.
that a lot of the people that they found came from rural areas, came
Mm.
from areas that didn't have a lot of investment. Therefore, the
Right.
education level and all of these things that would arguably, I feel we could make a really good argument on when having more education, access to more education and tools, right?
Mhm.
Help you be able to solve problems, problem solve in a way that is not led by emotion. When we have more education, ideally, not all the time, but ideally, if we have more education, we should also be having tools to work through our emotions and regulate conflict better. That's not
Right.
always the case, though. I want to make that clear. Just because you have a lot of education does not mean that you know how to engage
Right.
in conflict in a positive way, but
Right.
that should be the case,
Yeah. Yeah.
in my opinion. It was very targeted. You know,
Mm.
they really went for specific types of people.
They did.
And it to me it brought up this bigger idea of how we misuse and exploit people who have been oppressed.
Mhm.
We take them and then exploit them and
Mhm.
use them to make money in a lot of different
Mhm.
ways, and a lot and we do see it a lot in television, where we take people out of their norm, or
Mhm.
whatever they're used to, and it might be seen as chaotic or whatever, but that might be their norm, and we put them in front of people, and essentially we're putting them in front of people to judge them, to make other
Mm.
people, or it's kind of putting the worst idea of something, the worst case of something on television, and then letting people watch it and letting them judge it. And now you feel better about the fact that even though your husband might be cheating, it's not like what you seen on Jerry Springer, so somehow it
Mhm.
makes you feel a little bit better. And that's disgusting, in my opinion,
Mm.
because like it's really heartbreaking and unfair. And I think one of the things that came up when the news was kind of like highlighting the Jerry Springer show, and I don't even know if it was just the news, but when they were getting, what is it, not flashback, but negative feedback around how
Mm.
treating people, and when they started
Right.
to bring people who had been on the show, when they started to bring them in and kind of have conversations around it, especially after there was a murder that had to
Mm.
do with some of the people on the show.
Right.
One of the ladies had posed, and I don't remember who she was, but it was like on a TV show of like, did they follow up with people? Did they provide
Right.
counseling? Did they provide
Right.
resources? Right. And I think people will automatically go to like, well, that wasn't our job. Because I know some
Mm.
people in the documentary will say, like, it wasn't our job to fix their problem. It wasn't
Right.
our job to give them resources to make it better. We was just looking for the entertainment. And
Mhm.
so the bigger question for me kind of was like, as a person, if you're gonna choose to be somebody who provides a certain level of entertainment that has to do with people sharing the vulnerable pieces of themselves, does it
Mhm.
automatically make you responsible for providing some type of resource, some type of counseling, something that goes
Mhm.
in lieu with you bringing up those vulnerable pieces of people?
Right.
And of course, because we are social workers, right?
Mhm.
And as somebody who is a creative, and as somebody who has done a project that required people
Mhm.
to share vulnerable pieces of themselves, it felt
Mhm.
absolutely, there was no option to not
Right.
check in with their heart and make sure that like I'm handling and stewarding this properly, so that
Right.
I'm not sitting here and talking to you about some of your most vulnerable stuff
Mhm.
and then just leaving it. The importance to kind of have the pre-interview to say, what is the story? How would you like me to do this? What makes
Right.
you the most comfortable? These are the questions. Are there questions that you don't want to answer? Right? Like, in my opinion, I feel like if we're going to touch on the vulnerable stuff, then we should be having some type of support associated with that. But I also
Yeah.
recognize I'm biased in that, and I'm not mad about that bias,
Mm.
because like it seems as though a lot of those people, they were brought onto the television show, and it sounds like some of them were misled
Mhm.
in what was going to be the course of like what was going to actually happen,
Right.
and you was like essentially blindsided, and now you fighting like a dog on national television
Mm. Mm.
about something that really wasn't none of everybody's business.
That last point that you made, it made me think about how intimacy coordinators on a set where any type of sexual interaction between two characters in a show is a recently is a new development essentially within the TV and filmmaking industry. Prior to that, there was no such position,
Mm,
and actors, I suppose, would just go through whatever processes they would go through to prepare themselves to be fully naked on camera, except for, what specific areas they may cover with whatever tactics they use to do that. And there wasn't any kind of guidance around touch. And so how that could lead and probably did lead to a lot of discomfort and a lot of fear
Yeah.
around the safety, because not the thing that fascinates me about acting specifically as a profession and makes it so different from like a typical 9 to 5 like office job is you're playing a part that isn't necessarily you,
Right.
but you are also investing a lot of yourself
Hmm.
in order to put on this performance. And whenever I hear actors talk about how they get into character, whether it's method or if they have a specific process that they follow, a common thing that actors often say is that they have to find ways to kind of build the backstory or build the rationale behind the decisions their character makes, especially if the decision is casted as a villain, in order to humanize the character so that they can deliver a good performance for the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to the onset of intimacy coordinators being a new development on sets now, prior to that, like, I would imagine any actor as a person, especially if there's say this is a scene that is very explicit and graphic and like the interaction between the two characters is not consensual.
Yeah.
Like just how messy that would make the actor
Yeah.
feel and how that kind of feels like an exploitation,
Yeah. Like.
just like internally, because
Hmm.
it's like you're doing something to your partner, your colleague, and playing this role. And so it made me think about like how cognizant actors prior to having intimacy coordinators on set were to that kind of dynamic. And on the other side of that spectrum, for folks that were maybe already predatory,
Mm.
because we do hear a lot about in the film and TV industry how certain directors, certain actors, certain producers, operators that are responsible for the production of something abuse their power,
Absolutely.
and are very difficult to work with and don't take in consideration like creating an environment that is safe
Yeah.
and productive for everyone involved, cast and crew alike. So it made me think about just listening to you speak and making that last point made me think about all of that,
Hmm.
and how having an intimacy coordinator on set now must provide some relief and some lessen some anxiety around sexual scenes, because I
Hmm.
mean sex is always involved
Yeah.
in TV, especially American media most of the time because sex sells. But that's where my mind went when you made that last point. So yeah, it's all very ick. Like, ugh, like it
Yeah.
makes you feel not not great. And I also wanted to touch on the comments you made around the murder that had happened.
Yeah.
So that was one of the key examples that the producers that were the main outspoken folks
Hmm.
about this production that they pointed to, that they illuminated. And the question that you asked is, are we responsible for providing some type of care or some type of resolution for these folks when we bring them on to
Hmm.
to tell these wild stories about their lives and what they're doing. And I remember the producers that were speaking beginning to contemplate that seriously after what had happened.
So there's a redhead and then there's a brunette. That's how I'm going to distinguish the two.
That's helpful, yeah.
And the husband is Russian.
Mm,
So the Russian husband was with the redhead initially, and
mm,
they were married.
yeah.
Um, he gets deported or something like that.
Oh.
Has to be sent back to Russia.
Mm,
And I don't know if what I understood was that when he came back to the US, I
mm,
guess he got with the brunette lady,
right, right, right,
and
right, right.
the redhead wanted to get back with him and was under the impression that he was coming back to be with her. So from what I understand,
Mm,
I don't know who reached out to Jerry Springer or who Jerry Springer reached out to initially, but what I know is that Jerry Springer did reach out to the redhead, and she was and told her essentially that they would assist with him coming back to the US,
mm,
and that she was coming on the show in order to work on the relationship with her husband. Upon coming
mm,
on the show,
mm.
the now woman that the Russian man is with,
A brunette.
the brunette, is
Mm,
saying to the redhead that leave us alone. He does not want
mm.
you. He don't want to be with you. He wants to be with me.
Yeah.
Redhead is like, well, that's BS. Because based on what she understands, she's there to get back with her husband.
Right, right.
So when all things come out, Russian dude comes out, um, and come to find out he had been with his ex-wife, the redhead. They was
Mm,
just sleeping with each other and had just had sex with each other the night
mm,
before while they was
mm.
waiting to go on the show.
Right.
The Russian man says, "But I picked brunette. That's who I'm in love with, and I'm about to marry her."
Yeah.
So redhead is obviously caught off guard. Brunette is trying to get to her, trying to
Yeah.
stir up emotion, trying to make her have emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Redhead doesn't give in. She's basically like, okay, whatever.
Right.
And walk exit stage. That's when we hear that basically the producers are like, you have to go back out there. If you don't go
Yeah.
back out there, we're not giving you your ticket back to wherever she was from.
Yeah.
And so she just declines
Yeah.
and ends up having to make her own way back home.
Mm,
Fast forward, some months go by, and the Russian dude and the redhead end up back together.
mm,
Around the time they end up back together, by this time they bought a house together,
mm,
and they get into it. Come to find out, the Russian dude had a history of domestic violence. And
mm.
so that's where the commentary around the responsibility on of the producers and of Jerry Springer the show.
Right.
Because prior to coming on that show, he had files of domestic abuse against his ex-wife
Right.
already on the docket.
Right.
So when it comes down to now they're back together, they live in a house together, they have a domestic dispute that leads to redhead saying she's done, according to like files and according to police, she's done, she don't want to be bothered. They end up
Mm,
but he's in the house and he kicked her out this time. So they go to court,
yeah.
judge grants her house and all of that. And then around this time of them settling the divorce, that's when the show airs.
Yeah.
So they say basically he's in a bar and sees this recount of what happened when they was on the show. From there, he's drinking, watching the show. He decide he gonna go kill his ex-wife, and that's what he did.
Mm,
So in the midst of him going back to kill his ex-wife, I guess somehow he ends up back with the brunette though. So
yeah.
now both of them are seen as suspects in the murder. And so essentially the main connection, at least for me in regards to
Mm,
the show, is did y'all do background checks to know that he had a violent past? And
mm,
and was it did the Jerry Springer show have a responsibility in the murder of his ex-wife? I don't
mm,
think direct, But I
Mm.
do understand the point around, was y'all doing background checks on these people? Y'all bringing them on this show, bringing up their most vulnerable stuff that they got going on in real time? And are you
Mm.
checking to see if people have a violent history, if they have
Yeah.
domestic violence in their past? And is that something to consider before you bring them on national television and broadcast their business to the world, understanding that it's possible that it doesn't just end here?
Whew, so yeah, that being a center point, and thank you for
Yeah, no problem.
recapturing those details for me because even listening to it again and becoming familiar with, oh yeah, that was exactly
Mhm.
knowing when I watched it the first time, it's so chilling and
Yeah.
it would be if this wasn't encased in a documentary, I imagine it would be like fodder for some type of true crime podcast. But it also brought to mind just now the question of the standards, like the broadcast standards that exist, um, and the bodies or the authorities that are responsible for upholding and enacting those standards.
Mhm.
And obviously, around the time that the Jerry Springer show was running, completely different standards that there was then compared to now. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't know off rip because I've never looked into it prior, but I would imagine like some things have changed and some things have become more relaxed and some things have probably become more restrictive, but it also made me reflect on like the studios or these major networks when it comes to certain regulations for just like the language that people can use on TV shows. And it hasn't been until recent years that you could say bitch on
Mhm.
TV. You can't say it a lot of times necessarily, or how often you can say fuck, how often you could say cunt. Like these are terms that 10, 20, maybe even like, I don't know, 15, 5 years ago, like, well, maybe not
Yeah.
five, but some decades ago, it was like you would never see that unless it was on something that was like 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yep.
like late night. But Jerry Springer was like a prime time show. Like it had like a what
It
a
was
four or
like,
five or like
yeah. I want to
like
say it came on multiple times, and I think the
yeah,
first time might have been afternoon, that daytime
yeah,
television,
yeah,
like 1 o'clock
yeah,
ish, and then I think they will probably replay it in the
yeah.
evening.
And did they mention too? I'm recalling a memory from my first viewing of it. When they first started out, they had like a very late
Yes.
night
Yes.
slot,
Yes.
and they had a different, excuse me, they had a different approach for the
Yep.
show. Like
Yep.
I don't remember what the approach specifically was, but it wasn't what it ultimately turned out to be and what
Yeah.
ultimately made it the success that it was.
Correct.
And I think it's also kind of like a cult classic. Like there's also something very cultish about the
Mm-hmm.
environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a documentary on Netflix. We're not gonna get into it in this episode. But there's also a documentary on Netflix that I watched that it was very fascinating. That like kind of walks you through the tenets of what it is to be a cult leader.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's called like How to Be a Cult
How
Leader
to
or
be a
something like
cult.
that.
Yeah,
Something
I
that simple.
think that is what it's called.
Yeah. And I was just like, and I want to transition because I think that's where my thoughts are leaning into the question that you had posed earlier. Is was Jerry also exploited by this production? I find it fascinating how obsessive people can become with power
Oh
or
yeah.
with a certain degree of attention. I myself personally know that I feel good and confident and like rejuvenated by a certain degree of attention.
Mm.
Um because I think what it comes down to is feeling like you matter, feeling like you're important, feeling like you're valued. And then but when you become aware or conscious of like the impact or the influence that you have on people, and we talked about this in episode 2 about the influence in friendships and how it's important to be mindful of how you show up because that can influence how your friends show up as well in that relationship. I
Mhm.
think it also applies here when we talk about was Jerry being exploited because he was also aware of a certain degree of attention because he had been a politician for some time. Remind me again, he was the
Mayor,
mayor of
a city
Cincinnati.
council, a city
Uh,
council person first in Cincinnati, and then he
yeah,
became mayor.
the mayor. Yeah, he had good intentions, I think, and he wanted to do reputable things for whatever district or region that he represented when he held those positions. But then he somehow got involved in this show business.
Mhm.
And like I was saying earlier, there was a specific direction that the show was going to go in. But then when Dick got involved,
Yes.
they managed to get a time slot to be daytime, and he started to drive the show in a different direction. It's like Jerry was still getting this attention that he loved, that maybe he craved, and maybe that he was accustomed to in some way, having been a city council person and then a mayor. But then it kind of probably became this corrupted thing, right?
Mhm.
And something that I was saying earlier is like when you become invested in maintaining a specific outcome, you'll do anything to justify, to rationalize the means to get to that end.
Mhm.
And although we've expressed that towards the end of things and after things had come to a close, Jerry was remorseful about the impact the show had had, and the scars it would have left on all of the people involved, including himself, probably in that moment.
Mhm.
The reward of the cheers and being kind of like the guy when
Yeah,
you came
quite
out to
literally.
host the show.
The
Yeah.
show is named Jerry Springer.
It's
That is
literally the
why.
Jerry Springer show. Like it is
Yes.
you. You
Yeah.
like i- in order to keep going, s- that had to be enough of a reward.
Mhm.
And then like again, you become invested. So like now you have to maintain this level
Yeah.
of stamina, of energy, of just the way everything has been cultivated, and you don't get to take a break from it. You just have to keep pushing it out. So on some level, I do think that you could argue that Jerry was exploited,
Mhm.
but I think it's a much more subtle and a much more covert, like, I don't want to say it's more insidious because it there had to be moments where he looked at himself
Yeah.
and he was maybe in internally struggling with what was happening, or there may have been things that he just was not privy to, because I also think with the rich guy being the primary driver of all of this, in order to make sure that the ratings stay what they were and the money kept coming in, there's a certain way that you manage your talent, which was Jerry Springer, to kind of like shield them from the true muck of it all so that they can remain to be your shining star. Because you would hope, anyone that's like reasonable and rational enough, you would hope that like once the center point of all this, Jerry Springer, became aware of what was happening, it makes him go like, wait, no, I this is not, I don't want to be a part of any of this. And
Right.
I can't remember if they alluded to any of that being the case with Jerry.
Nah, I wouldn't say that. I
Yeah.
think I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
So I can't remember if they alluded to any of that, but it made me wonder about that. So in closing, I'll say on my thought to the question, was he exploited too? I think yes, but it's it maybe was more minor than it was for the production team, than it was for the guests on the show, because I would imagine or guess that he was shielded from a lot of it. Like there's just certain things that he wouldn't have been privy to, either purposefully by Rich's direction or by his own volition,
Mm.
because had he had to face it every day, that would have disrupted the star power, that would have disrupted like that reward of being the guy.
Mhm. 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 You said a lot. I wrote down some notes because I have so much to say, but
Okay. Okay.
although you are hesitant to use insidious as the word, I
Hmm.
think that it's the perfect word
Okay.
because I think that, and you know me, everything has a spiritual component to it. And
Fair enough.
so Jerry in the two episodes when they are
Hmm.
kind of giving us an idea of Jerry and what his intention was, he
Yeah.
wanted to create change. He
Mm.
wanted to be positive. That was
Right.
the intention.
Right.
But nobody was watching when he
Right.
was trying to do that.
Right.
Richard comes in as the executive director, and there's an episode that shifts something and garners a lot of attention.
Right.
And so based off the attention, they like direction. Shit, let's
Right.
shift direction.
Right.
Jerry though did want attention. You know, he was an
Mm.
actor, politics. He was somebody who did want the attention. He
Right.
did get something from it, right? Like,
Right.
so I almost think that like there's this balance between you would like for there to be positive change. You want to have a positive impact. You want to do good stuff, okay?
Right.
You're in a position where you've been positioned to have attention and to keep
Mm.
attention clearly based off of your history already. You start this television show and we have a base here. But now, how do we get people interested in you and keep you
Right.
and make you somebody who people want to watch?
Right.
Unfortunately, what is reflected is that people don't want good. They don't want positive change. They want foolishness. And so Richard sees Jerry as a start. Jerry is a good starting point. Jerry is a good vessel, is the word.
Yeah.
Jerry is a good vessel to get a winning show, but the direction has to change. So yeah, he
Mm.
got good values and everything.
Yeah.
What he really want is attention.
Yeah.
What he really want is people to say his name. So
Mm.
even if we go opposite of his values, if we give him what his soul, what his heart want, what his heart desire, we gonna be cooking
Mm.
with grease because even though it's opposite of what he's trying to do, it is giving him something that gratifies him, that makes him feel good.
Mm.
Woo! Message. Hello. And so
No, that's good. Yeah.
what it ended up being was a character check on Jerry.
Mm.
So I do think that at the beginning you were exploited based off your weakness and your desire for attention.
Mm.
However, you became the exploiter or you became a partner of the exploiter
Mm.
when you was like, I want these stories to be real. Cause that's what they was the
Yeah.
cast. Jerry, like,
Mm.
no, I need them to be real. I don't want them to be fake. I want them to be real deal. I need them to be raw. Cause that's
Yeah.
gonna keep people coming. At that point is when he went from exploited to exploit her. In the documentary, they talked about once they got to number one,
Mm.
the need and the hunger to maintain it.
Right.
And one of the producers or writers or whatever, he talked
Hmm.
about like, at one it was fun. It used to be fun. And then it
Yeah.
into like you're really like your livelihood, essentially what you were saying earlier, their livelihood was on stake, was on the chopping block. Like it's like if I don't get the right story, if I don't get a real story, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yep. Hmm.
And so that moving up, it's really it's so symbolic to me because it's like once you move up, you want to maintain. Once
Right.
you get the power, you want to maintain the power. But
Right.
what do you have to do to maintain it? And what are you willing to
Mm.
do to maintain it? And that's the character check.
Mm. Yep.
That
That's
is
good.
where who you are and who your heart is, that is where we see who you are for real. Is what
Mm.
you do to maintain the power.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
I
so,
hear you.
and then money,
Mm.
obviously. The money
Hmm.
is the thing outside of somebody screaming and yelling your name, you getting a check too.
Mm.
And so they highlight Jerry's daughter having a disability.
Mm.
And that was a really special point in his heart, right? And so
Mm.
then like when we think about humanizing a person and we thinking about the understanding, like going back to what you were saying about the actors and them understand, even if they're playing a villain role, humanizing them and why they're doing what they're doing. I don't know Jerry. I never talked to him, but
Right.
I'm willing to bet that there was some type of correlation between him doing what he felt like he needed to do to support and sustain his daughter and assist her and give her the resources and the tools that she needed, being somebody who has and lives with a disability.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
so there's like,
Mhm.
is it a tug and pull? I don't know, but just the people like to call it nuance, but just the humanity of him
Mm.
and the different dynamics that may have gone into his choice, but it still doesn't change the fact that
Yeah.
you did exploit people.
Right.
And we see that in him later talking about like being able to actually be accountable and say like, yeah, no, my
Yeah.
contributions was not good. And
Right.
I feel a way about it. And I know that it was trash, essentially.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
like I think that there's a lot there. There's
Mm.
really a lot there. That's
Mm.
so exciting for like a sociologist, psychologist type of like it is really like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Last point. Did you watch the Freaknik documentary on Hulu?
I did not.
Okay. So another suggestion.
Okay.
I think that everybody should watch it, but eat
Okay.
100% you, because
Okay.
I'm curious to know your thoughts based off of the conversation that we're having, where something intended for good is
Mm.
is corrupted.
Yeah.
Freaknik same has a similar foundation.
Mm.
Freaknik started as a picnic,
Mhm.
and the picnic was started on a black HBCU university, and they would do this
Mhm.
picnic, and it started an annual thing. So it was an
Okay.
annual picnic, and it's all of these college kids basically coming together to have a good time, party, kick it.
Yeah.
There is one man whose name I cannot remember at this time in this moment, who comes along and essentially shifts the picnic into a freaknik, and now it has become this hypersexual, dangerous
Mm.
for women situation that it
Oh.
was never intended to be.
Mm.
And so I bring that up because I'm like, wow,
Mm.
the power of one man's character or
Mm.
lack of, and the way in which it can shift something that could have been so positive and instead ended up being extremely negative and had a long-term negative impact on things outside
Mm.
just whatever that was. The men responsible for these things, when
Mm.
seen in interviews and stuff like that and commenting on certain things,
Mhm.
there is lack of remorse. Like within the Freaknik documentary, the guy responsible was like, I made it better. I turned it into something, like
Mm. Yeah.
he does not care about the negative impact
Mm.
that his influence had on the event.
Mhm.
Same with Jerry, the Jerry Springer show.
Mm.
Now I can't speak for Richard today, but
Right.
there is an interview where they're like, is there a line? Should there be a boundary? And he dead ass says, no, there is no line. There is no boundary. He says, if I could kill somebody on live national television, I would.
Oh my.
That's a quote. That's what he said.
Wow.
So all that does is it reflects his heart. That
Mm.
reflects who he is as a person.
Mm.
That reflects his soul, his spirit. That's what that reflects.
Mm.
And so, yeah, yeah. And so my question from that is, what the audience
Mm.
is the audience exploiters or exploited? The people watching,
Mm.
the people watching in the building, and the people watching at home.
There are many thoughts that are occurring to me in response to that question. but I'm gonna stick with what I wrote down.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
So your reflections in response to the things that I said brought to mind two ideas. One
Mm-hmm.
is a quote, which I'm going to read in a second, and the other is this idea that we've heard a lot in our work is intention versus impact. So
Mm.
what you intend to do versus the outcome or the result, the consequences of what happened. Your intentions won't matter if your impact is negative. And what it brought to mind for me is like, but there's always going to be a positive and a negative depending on where you stand and what your understanding of someone's intentions were. The question it brings to mind for me is like, is there is there ever a perfect course of action? It's fascinating to consider how obsessive people become with power and what power is. It's this intangible thing. It's not
Right.
something that you can like readily grasp in your
Yeah.
hands. It's something that is intangible, it's conceptual, it's abstract,
Yes.
but everyone is seeking it in some way.
That's good.
So yeah, that was one of the questions that came to mind is like, is there ever a perfect course of action? The quote that it brought to mind was a quote by Margaret Mead. And the quote is, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I thought of that quote because going back to the question that I posed is there ever a perfect course of action and thinking about intention versus impact? There are always committed, thoughtful groups of people that want to do things for the good and as well as that want to do things for the worse. And
Yes.
in the example that you gave about this person involved with the freaking, he was like, I made it better. Like this is what I set out to do a thing and I did it and it was absolutely everything that I imagined, everything that I dreamed it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when you think about that, then never doubt that an intentional, like a committed group of people can change the world. It can go in either
Yes.
direction. And then my last thought was going back to like what you said around this being a fascinating thing for the sociological, the psychological, the social work mindset to consider, to ponder. It is so fascinating because that is what it is to be human. Like when we ask ourselves what is the meaning of life, it is to ascribe meaning. It is to decide what our values need to be, what justice is. It is to create these markers and these, bastions of what character
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
But for so long the narrative has been controlled by a specific mindset, a specific group of people, and it seems like not for lack of trying, we can't seem to get away from that. And in your comments, you were asking the question about whether or not is the audience, are they exploiting, are they exploiters? It's a question of morality, I think, is the
Mm-hmm.
the crux of what I think we're getting to here is like what is moral and immoral. And again, these are not tangible concepts. Like there are
Right.
certain things that we know are just inherently like not okay. I mentioned this earlier. There's something where we just can't seem to turn our eyes away from misfortune when it's no
Yeah.
matter how it manifests to us. Like
Wow.
there's
Yeah.
just something, and I think a person who wants to make a strong argument and wants to have a more positive and uplifting and encouraging perspective about it might say, well, the reason why we're drawn to those things is because number one, it's about self preservation. So if there's something happening in front of us that is dangerous, our flight or flight, our stress response is triggered so that we can figure out how to navigate the situation. And either we're going to flee, we're going to fawn, we're going to freeze, or we're going to fight. But I think from like the spiritual aspect, because you said there's something that's deeply spiritual about all this. From the spiritual aspect of that, it's like you look at it because it's like a call to action. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't be a bystander. There's something that you need to do, whether it's something that you wrestle with internally and you turn it over in your mind and that informs your character and how you show up in the world, or you truly intervene in that space and say like, no, this is not right. This cannot go
Mm.
on.
Hmm.
Um, I think that that's one argument that you can make. And then I think if you're someone that's more cynical and maybe nihilistic about things, you maybe just have like this opinion that people are just fucked up. But those were the kind of the two things that came to mind. It's just like one is to determine, how you respond to something.
Hmm.
Um, to ensure that there's a just outcome or what have you. And then one is like, this is just the baseline of who we are as people. Like
Yeah,
these things are just going to exist. And at the end of the day, we're called to darkness just as much as we are called to light. It's so existential in a way.
it is. I
And
agree.
existential conversations can be very overwhelming, but in this moment I feel very kind of just like entranced
Yeah.
with the thoughts and the feelings that I'm having right now. But with that being said, some of your other reflections made me think about transitioning into our next piece of this conversation
Hmm.
and wanted to take some time to talk about exploitation as a means of achieving success. And I
Hmm.
really loved how you phrased early on in your comments about Richard exploiting Jerry's heart's desire,
Hmm.
right? And how our desires can be the things that debase us in some ways.
Hmm.
Our desires can be the things that dehumanize us in some ways because we just don't know how to hold space for the nuance. We don't know how to hold space for the darkness in absence of the light. Like we're always in pursuit of the light to
Hmm.
snuff out the darkness because the darkness is the seething, corruptible
Hmm.
thing that we just don't know how to sit with. If the overarching question of today's episode is like, are we exploitative? Are we exploiters? I think the answer is unequivocally yes. But to what degree is that exploitation? Because you asked the question of like, what does it mean to maintain power? What do you what does it take for you to maintain whatever power that you have?
Hmm.
So, yes, and yes, we are exploiters. Yes, we don't have necessarily have to identify as exploiters, but yes, we can be exploitative. Yes, we can be exploiters. But to what degree that's true depends on like, well, what does success mean for you? And that's
Yeah,
that's one of our questions is just like, well, what
that's
does success? How do you define success? And so
that's a
I'm
good
gonna
one.
I'm gonna turn it to you because I've been talking for a while now. Like, how do you, Lady G,
That's really
define
good.
success?
So overall, thank you for all of that. There was some stuff that came up, but I know we probably should move forward. Um, so maybe not obviously, success is subjective, and success is not one thing. It does not look one way, and I
Mm,
feel as though society has implied that it looks like a specific thing. A lot of us were fed this idea of the American dream in
mm-hmm.
school early on.
Right.
The house with the white picket fence, the dog, a nuclear traditional
Family.
family.
Mm-hmm.
That was the image that we were given, that if we got those things, we have succeeded. We are
Mm-hmm.
successful. Based on the way everything then went so far, we know that just ain't true. Even if I got a house and a white picket fence, I may
Right.
not feel successful. People
Yeah.
have gotten to that place and are miserable, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't know why. And it
Right.
has to do with the fact that they got the thing that society told them to get, but they never sat down to ask themselves what it was that they actually wanted,
Mm,
who they are, and what they
mm.
actually want. So
Yeah.
success for everybody looks different based on that. Based on
Yeah.
what does it mean for me to live a life that is fulfilling? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What am I doing in that life?
Mm,
And how do I what steps do I what steps do I take to reach that and sustain it?
mm,
And so success to me is being able to wake up each day in a way that doesn't feel rushed or overwhelmed, be able to take my time to set into the day, to thank God for giving me another one, to be able to have all of the bills and the things that I'm responsible for be paid for, and whatever I'm doing is able to sustain the life that I would like to live. And I'm not having to kill myself in order to do those things. I think baseline that's success for me. I don't want to have to kill myself in order to make a life for myself, in order to make a life for my children. I don't think that success is me having to choose my job over my family. I don't think that success is working long hours to be able to say that, like, okay, I did the thing, but I missed the baseball game. I missed the family outing. I missed my best friend's birthday. I missed a big part of what it is to be human, which is our socialization, our community, interacting with each other. So to me, success has different components, but I do think society has told us, again, the American dream piece. Even though I feel like we've kind of busted out of this idea of the American dream, there are still components of it where it's like making six figures, success, owning a mansion, success, driving a foreign car with all these unnecessary gizzards and gazmos thingies. Success. In my opinion, all of those are like, don't get me wrong, because when I make it and when I'm wealthy in all ways, not just monetary ways, but when it happens, because it's happening, I'm gonna have me a nice house now. I ain't saying that I'm not. So when they pull this up and say, you said, hold on now, because I want to be, what I would like is a nice size house. That's what I want for myself. I don't feel bad about that, but I'm not saying that I need a 15-house mansion if I don't got 15 people to fill them rooms. I'm not saying that either. In no way am I saying you shouldn't want nice things and all of that, because I want nice things. I want to live a nice life. I want to be able to travel. And I think my success in that is being able to have those nice things, being able to afford a good traveling vacation, being able to go and live the life that I feel like God intended for me to live. And it doesn't necessarily always look like $10,000, $100,000 in the bank, because I feel as though, and I have been blessed enough to live a life where I don't have a lot of money in my bank account, but I've had some really great experiences.
In terms of what success means to me, is just to be at home in this existence. Like, there are so many things that stress me out. Some of it that is self-inflicted, some of it that is not, very much not. And it can and consistently disrupts like how I make sense of who I am and what I'm here for all of the time. And so yeah, just to be at home in this existence, this may not be what home is like permanently for me, because this body will perish at some point and I don't know what happens after that. But yeah, that's what I would define as success for me in this current moment. I would have given a different answer 20 minutes ago, but in this current moment, it's like it's to be at home in this existence in whatever capacity feels grounded and mindful and kind and conscious, and wanting to contribute good and value to the world. And that's not to take away from some of the other things that you brought up in expressing your definition of like some of the material things. But I think like if the foundation for me is not feeling at home in my existence, then none of those material things are gonna matter.
What you said about success and then just being at home. And to me, what I hear from that is remaining present, being able to be present in where we are and what is happening, and not be worrisome and not be anxious, but to just be present. And I feel like I've seen a few videos recently coming up on different timelines about that. So I just wanted to say that. And then what you said about us seeking just
Mm,
consistent, like this life is about, it's not necessarily always about coming to a stance on something, coming to
mm,
a firm, this is this and this is what it is.
mm,
A lot of life is about questions and continuing to be open to growth. And it's so
mm,
crazy because I had this moment with myself yesterday and I recorded it because I was like thinking and I was like, this was good. I'm about to record this so I don't forget it. And now here we are, and this is a good moment to say it.
mm,
Which is that I was like, it's really us living this life is not about perfection, because perfection
mm,
is not something that we can attain.
mm,
However, what it is about is us striving and continuing to being open to growth
mm,
and the right type of growth. And if
mm,
we continue to be open to growth, we continue to ask the questions and be willing to receive the answers and take heed to them, we
mm,
inevitably grow and become better. And ideally,
mm,
if the things we're taking in are wisdom, are good, are kind, are of truth, essentially, are of
mm,
love, essentially, then our world, our existence, whether that be our house and home, whether that be our neighborhood community, whether that be the globe in general, gets
mm,
better. Because
mm,
if we are open to growth, growth leads us to the good thing. And
mm.
hello, people, that's God. This was a conversation.
It was. And for me, what it was, although I'm operating off of 3 hours of sleep, a lot of your responses to my reflections have felt encouraging because off camera, when you asked me like, how are things going and things of that nature, I was like, overall, yeah, like things are good, but I don't think that that's really true. I think there's a headspace that I'm struggling against.
Mm,
I don't want to think a certain way. I don't want to rest in a certain set of thoughts.
right.
I journaled yesterday because I was just like right before bed, which I'm not going to bed at like decent times. My sleep hygiene is terrible. Ooh, we're getting very vulnerable right now. But my sleep hygiene has been very terrible since I've been without work, and it's been like several nights in a row over the past 2 weeks where my thoughts are so bitter
Mm,
about my circumstances, about the state of the world right now, and
mm,
I'm having trouble getting to sleep because I'm ruminating on these very bitter, very unproductive thoughts. And so I told myself, you need to journal so that you can kind of like release some of this.
mhm, mhm,
But that weight hasn't lifted yet.
mhm,
Um, and so like that's why when I was saying like earlier, success to me in this moment is feeling at home in my existence because I don't.
mm,
Is very much tied to that circumstance, that struggle that I'm having right now.
mm,
And yeah, a lot of what you said today in reflection to the things that I've said, which I don't think takes away from anything that I've said. I think both of the things that we've said today are valid in their own right, whether other folks agree or disagree. But it's felt very encouraging. It's felt very like I don't know another verb to say, like a pouring into. And
mm.
so I appreciate that because I don't know what I don't know what and how I was gonna show up today with my lack of sleep. It is wonderful to feel seen.
Of course.
That is what I'll say in closing. Um, so to all of you, if
Mhm.
you're still here,
Yeah.
um, thanks for hanging out and holding on to this
Yeah.
end. And if anything in this conversation stuck out to you and made you question whether or not your actions have been exploitative,
Mm,
be that intentionally or unintentionally, do take some time to figure out what is your leading desire. Figure out if the outcomes you are seeking are what you truly want, and then act accordingly.
Don't just talk about it, walk it.
Any closing thoughts from you, Glow?
Ooh, no, baby, that's the quiet part out loud, honey. That is the quiet part. For real.
Out loud.